at 7, the weekly chat show where we talk to people who are in interesting and offbeat careers and we get to learn from their career journey. Our guest for today is Dr. Hemang Shah. Dr. Hemang Shah works with startups in India to design innovative products that includes drones, medtech, EVs, and other innovations that will change the game in India. He also advises companies on their IP strategy. Dr. Shah holds a Ph.D. from electrical engineering from Drexel University and is an innovation and tech evangelist. So, tech transfer evangelist. And I know I must have gotten at least some of them wrong. So, instead of making you all more confused, let's invite Dr. Hemang Shah to this show and hear it in his own words.
Hemang Shah.
Hello, Hemang. Thank you so much for being a part of this show. I'm really excited to hear all about your career from you.
Well, thank you for having me here. And I love the name Refocus or Wednesdays Refocus at 7. I think we all need to do that. So, again, thank you for having me here.
Right. It's my pleasure to have you here. And to everyone who's listening right now, this is going to be a live show where we talk to Dr. Hemang and learn about his career steps. And if you have any questions for Hemang or for me, or in general, any observations, you can leave your thoughts in the comments and we'll be very happy to answer them. All right, Hemang, moving over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly you do and what does a tech transfer evangelist mean?
Sure. So, Hemang Shah, a broad portion of my work involves working with startups in India who are solving various problems. They solve. It's interesting. They're solving problems that they see around themselves. So, however, these problems are global in nature. So, for example, you have someone that is looking at how, let's say, wounds are or diagnosing wounds can take a long time when you do swab tests and everything. So, they are developing devices through which, when you image them, you can get through their AI algorithms, you can get the answer in a very short amount of time. Or you have someone that is using like XR, which is a combination of AR and VR, for skilling people in the areas of, let's say, welding and spray painting. So it's not just for gaming or entertainment purposes, but it's a very different nature of work that they are doing, and so on, right? So first, and I would say I've worked with close to 100 plus startups in India across a variety of capacities. So one of my key charters is to enable them on the technical front, which is, take a look at what their engineering roadmap is and make sure that it is built to scale. They can get into production quickly. They're not just doing demos. They're actually thinking of a scale up plan. And the other part of my work is, again, through my prior experience, is guiding them on their intellectual property strategy. And since these are tech startups, IP such as patents play a very important role in building their company assets over time, right? So it's guiding them and making sure that they are building a portfolio of these IP assets, which will be very helpful to these companies when they no longer will remain a startup, when they'll become much larger companies. That hopefully some of them will enter the market, some of them will do much larger things, down the line.
Right, that's very interesting. So, what do you exactly do? Do you like help them develop the products, build the products, tech
Correct.
products?
Yeah,
You
we
have
so we
them do.
guide them. Yeah, we do that. So that is through my so I work for a company called Qualcomm, and
Mm-hmm.
must clarify that I'm here in a personal capacity. But anyway, through this
Right.
program, what we do is we have an incubation program. It's one of our flagship startup initiatives that we have. So over a
Mm-hmm.
period of 9 months, they actually build like their end product with us, and we keep the relationships with them even after their incubation period has ended. So we are very happy to be in
Okay.
touch with them for years. So
Right.
so when they
So,
build, our goal is to try to
right.
guide them into pilot production, and then
Mm-hmm.
later nudge them along the way as they make progress in their journey.
Right. That's very interesting. So, is it like, do you do it with your team? Do you have your own
Yeah.
team, or do you do it with your company? Like, is it like on a freelance thing or is it like on a company thing?
No, this is like I'm an employee. Like this
Okay,
program
right,
is through the company I work for, and yes, we have a dedicated team that works
right.
with these startups.
Okay, got it. That is very, very interesting, and it sounds very exciting as well. So you must have had experience building so many different products over so many years, right? Is there anything that is very close to your heart, and that is like that fascinated you a lot, and that challenged you a lot, and taught you a lot about tech in general and the startup scene in India as well? You don't have to
So,
name names. You can just tell us the
yeah.
story.
Uh, so from the startups, you mean?
Yes.
Actually, the examples are just many, and the way they are really touching lives, right? So, uh, like I spoke about this company which is doing XR for vocational training, right? Like when you talk of spray painting or welding, you go
Right.
to certain institutes to get trained. So it means you got to have materials that are available for you. There'll be
Okay.
wastage as you try to build proficiency. If I'm going to become a painter, I'm going to waste a lot of actual paint trying to do it, right? So by the time I become qualified, to be hired, as a worker, imagine the amount of chemical wastage I've done,
Yes.
apart from spending all that money and time into it. So the time part of course needs to be there. So there's this company which is building these XR solutions that on these certified devices, whether it's the spray paint gun or whether it's a welding machine that they have to use, so they get trained very fast.
Right.
Yeah, similarly, we have a company that is doing water and sewage monitoring that will
Okay.
tell you over time that what is firstly the quality of the water and the sewage, but also what are the blockages at various drainage pipes. At what time the civic authorities need to be informed so that all the backlogs are cleared. And if you look at the
Right.
waterlogging situations we have in so many cities around the country,
Yes,
this
I
is
am
a
from
very
Assam,
impactful
so
product.
I can say that, waterlogging is such a big problem here, floods, waterlogging. So it is a very big problem in India for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
and the infrastructure can become smarter, right? The civic authorities also doing their best, but sometimes
Right.
they don't have the full data, right? Okay, what's happening at a particular point, what blockage do they need to clear? So I think that's
Right.
where such smarter solutions will really change the
Right.
game in the country.
That is very exciting. That's very interesting and so exciting. And I had no idea that, these kind of startups also exist in India. So very happy to know that as well. This is a little bit off topic, but I'm very curious to know your take on it since you have actively worked with startups like this. So I see this topic floating around a lot about, AI or artificial intelligence replacing humans. And I think you talked about this right now about the spray painting and that particular
Right.
example. So, what is your take on it? Like, very short. We don't have to go into that AI versus human discussion,
Sure.
but just your take on it.
Right now, where I stand, I see AI as a tool, right? It's an enabler tool that can help you. At a
Right.
personal level, I don't think it's going to be a replacement for a human being, because there are a lot of nuances that a human being has, right? Like
Of
the
course.
flavor that that energizes you, or the smell of a fragrance, right? There's so many things where it will baffle you that
Right.
oh really, how am I so sensitive to certain things? Who taught me that? So AI will never be able to replace that. Or let's say the inspiring song, or like you're a writer, so a lot of your ideas come on the fly, and you may not have any rhyme or reason for how that idea hit you. But that's what
Right.
makes us human, right?
Of
So I
course.
don't
Yes.
think AI. However, you can use AI as an enabler tool, right? It's going to help you make smarter. So to me, technology is always going to be this assistance that we have.
Right.
Right. We
Right.
have calculators for a long time. That doesn't mean our brains have stopped functioning. It just means
True.
that we can do a lot things more efficiently. Same
Right.
thing with computers or coding, right? Our essence, our human essence, I think will always remain.
Right. That's a very, I love that answer. It's so well balanced, and it comes from a place of experience as well. So thank you for that answer. Even I believe the same that, AI cannot replace humans, but if we use AI as a tool, it can take us much farther than we would go on our own, even in writing or in social media as well. So yes, thank you so much for that really nice answer, Hemang. So my next question to you is, How did your path venture towards your current role? What was the journey like? Like I know you have a PhD in electrical engineering. So how did you find yourself where you are? How does the career journey look like?
I wish I could say this was exactly planned and executed on that plan. No, none of it was planned. Uh, like including my doctorate, right? I happened to be in grad school. I happened to work with a professor, and enjoyed working with him. And
Right,
so I'm like, okay, if I leave after before I complete a doctorate, I will just barely scratch the surface. And then I got a after my doctorate, I got a role in various R&D capacities, and that always fueled me. But there was one thing which was common. So one was, throughout my studies, I've always found myself at bridge roles between different disciplines, be it
right,
engineering disciplines, where in my doctorate I was at the intersection of two or three engineering disciplines. Same thing at my work. So so understanding different areas of work, different technologies, for example, I think that exposed me to a lot of the things which I was not aware of. You learn from other people who are experts in those domains, and
right,
I somehow had a interest for innovation, how we innovate, what makes good innovative products. I had a curiosity towards that, so I just
true,
started, nurturing that aspect in me. And some of these were actually, I would say, like, I think at the beginning you spoke of these side hustles, right? So I had a lot of these side projects within the same company that were small, and some of those became big, some of those went away. I had the same
right,
thing as a student. Like I would always have some of these side projects to explore something. And I think the idea of that exploration, of being that sort of that entrepreneur as opposed to the external entrepreneur, being an
right.
entrepreneur enabled me to be where I am today. So I think I just nurtured that, one thing led to another. And yeah, I guess, yeah, here I am.
I love that answer. I'm going to follow up on that. But before that, we have a question from the audience. It's a question from Sasi Rekha, and the question is, how do you manage to do the context switch between startups? Every startup is different, and it must take a good time to get a good understanding of what they do.
That's a wonderful question. Uh, for what I've realized over time is having some frameworks help you. Now, I've done this enough, both in internal roles and external roles, to work with innovators. So some of these frameworks have become like second nature, but a very clean, simple framework that anyone can adopt is the why, what, how. So anytime you're learning something new, firstly you try to understand, why is this thing important? And it's fine if you say that, hey, this is not important, and you leave that, you check out mentally. At least you may want to be polite and you hang around, but at least you have to understand, why is this problem important. Then you ask that person or that company, what are you doing to solve that problem? And the third question is, how are you solving it? So the minute you get these things, slowly you'll find that, okay, fine, I understand what this company is trying to do. And you may not be always successful, like you may not be always able to understand what they do in, let's say, a 5-minute conversation, but you'll have enough context to, let's say, have a follow-up with them.
Right.
So when you switch to topics, sometimes having these frameworks, plays a very important role.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. I think, anything you do, anytime you do something new, having a framework helps you. Otherwise, you will feel lost where to start, how to start. But yeah, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you. I hope that answers your questions, Asireka. If you have any follow up, you can definitely leave it in the comments. So coming back to the previous question, Hemang, you were saying that that intrapreneurial thing that you had, that you wanted to try out new things and you were curious about different things, and the interdisciplinary, the intersection of two branches or two streams of knowledge. I think you are still exhibiting that in your career, right? Because you are doing so much related to tech, but you have a podcast as well, and that podcast is called Innovation, Sports, and Life, which are like three different things with innovation, sports, and life. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your podcast? How did the journey start and how is it going so far?
Yeah, thanks, Anaksha, for bringing that up. So again, I'm fueling my curiosity gene by, uh, through this podcast. Uh, So I've been always curious about how we innovate, and everyone has a different approach. And to me, innovation is not just technology. Like a potter could be an innovator, right? How an artist could innovate. Like every look around you, there are innovations galore. So I'm curious about that. Ever since I can remember, I've been a sports nut. Like,
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about any sport, I'll watch it. If there's gilly danda on the TV, I'll watch it. Right? If there is statistics around that, I'll watch that. I'll tune into sometimes Doordarshan shows these games which are played in the hinterland, games
Mm-hmm.
that I don't know what they're called, but it's just so much fun to watch. And
Okay.
I think sport is an amazing way. Like people say that sport mimics life, but I like to sometimes flip that thing and say that I think our life mimics sport,
Mm-hmm.
because anytime you play a game, you end up thinking a bit smarter. You think on your feet. You end up
True.
strategizing.
So true.
Take all those examples, apply it to your life. I don't
Yes.
have to be the best cricket player, but I can still learn from what our men or women's cricket team is doing and say, okay, fine,
Right.
if they can try a different approach, maybe let me adopt some of that and apply it to my world. So
Mm-hmm.
this podcast tries to explore that. So I've had the luxury of talking with some brilliant sports people, some book authors, some some of those are my own internal wonderings and musings on different topics. But the theme is
Right.
always going to be the same. How do we get better as people, particularly in the area of innovation?
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. And I think Anshuman just asked the question, how did Hemang get into a sports related podcast? So I think this answers Anshuman's question as well. I have a small follow up. Do you only watch sports or do you also play sports?
I've played a whole lot of sports. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think in school I used to play, well, basketball, hockey, like field hockey,
Okay.
football. I tried my hand at karate. I gave it up. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course cricket and the unorganized sports like be it marbles, be it book cricket. I call all of that as sport. I, you know,
Yes,
but
of course,
nowadays
they are
actively,
sports. Yes.
uh,
And it
so
makes
but
you think, right?
yeah, at a very serious level, I would say tennis. I played tennis for a number of years, and then
Oh, okay.
squash. So for
Right.
squash, my goal is to again. I have two young boys, so I want to teach squash to them. So I became like a squash coach at
Mm-hmm.
for this fundamental level, like to
Okay.
just get kids up and running. So squash and tennis have been the ones that I've been very serious at.
That's amazing. So we have a comment from Mrinal who is saying, taking inspiration from fields that are different from our own can really help us see things in amazing ways, which is so true. And coming
Yeah.
back to the thing that we're just talking about, since you just mentioned, the role of innovation in sports, right? Like just yesterday, so I live in a place where we continually go and play table tennis with our friends, and all of them are they are boys, and they have played more than me, so they are more expert than me, and they can do like things that I can't do, spin and smash, which I can't do. So to win against them, I have to think very strategically. So if they are at this side of the court, I have to throw the ball in a place where they cannot hit. So it's like I have to constantly use my mind, and it's like I always notice that when I think a lot, I always get tired. It's like much more tired than the amount of physical activity that I would have done. So you have to think like so much while playing a simple game of table tennis. So obviously, if you watch professional sports, it would be even more. You can always the psychological warfare. I think it's constantly going on, right, between two opponents instead of just what you see on the TV on the screen. So this is a very interesting topic, and I'm very curious to listen to your podcast as well. So I'm definitely going to leave a link in the comments. So people who are watching, please do check out Hemang's show. I think it sounds so interesting. And Hemang, you should tell us your favorite episodes so we can check them out as well.
Thank you, Anaksha. By the way, first for your table tennis tip, whenever
Mm-hmm.
I found myself playing games that I'm not an expert at, go with
Mm-hmm.
your instinct. You don't care about winning or losing, but just go
Right.
with your instinct. Leave your thinking hat aside, uh,
Right.
because they'll be surprised with how fast you are hitting back. And sometimes for table tennis, the weirdest thing that I found that does the trick is
Mm-hmm.
you play as if they are kids. to kids, you give
Right.
the ball at a very lob, ask them, chal, smash karke dikha. And
Yes,
hardly
that's
any
what.
of them will land.
That's what I do. Like my goal is to keep the ball as low as possible so it cannot be smashed, and
Yeah.
just keep it in
Or
a place where
no,
it's
no,
hard
change it
for them
up.
to
Change
penetrate.
it up. Give them that, like these really lallu shots. Uh,
Okay.
and
If I do lallu shots, they're going to like hit it so hard. So it's like
yeah.
very
See, in cricket, the
and
slower ball works sometimes. So
right.
try that analogy. Uh,
True. And we play with I play with friends, so there's a lot of trash talk going on. Like, everyone keeps saying, "Oh, I will win, you will win," and I have to, really. I feel that that I need to show them that even if I don't have skills, I can still play. It's a lot of fun. It teaches you a lot as well, and it's a really amazing workout. Like I know my Fitbit
true.
shows like some 400 calories, but I feel so tired. I feel like I burned like maybe 1,000 calories just by thinking where to place the ball next.
Yeah, I mean, it's research shows chess players burn a lot of calories, right? And
Okay.
if you think that physical movement is hardly anything, right? It's
Mhm.
but they expend so much time, just through the thoughts and all that. I
True.
forget, I can't recall right now what is the number of calories they burn. And
Okay.
contrary to opinion, chess players actually have to eat a lot because they
Mhm.
burn so much calories during an actual game.
Right, right. That's
Yeah.
true. That's amazing. And I remember reading a statistics that was in the first chapter of the book Sapiens, and it said that whatever calories we consume, 40% of it is used by our brain. So that obviously makes sense, right?
Wow.
Because we spend so much energy thinking. Anyway, this
Yeah.
is not. We're not going to talk about sports or calories, but this was a really fun discussion, and your podcast sounds really fun.
Yeah.
So
Thank
moving
you.
on to the next, yes. Moving on to the next question, Hemang. This is a question I ask all of my guests, and it's a question to invite you to think maybe a little or share your journey with the audience even a little bit more. So the question is, if you had to retrace your steps in your career that you have today, whatever you have achieved today, is there anything that you would do differently?
Okay,
Okay,
looks like I'm back. Sorry, there was some glitch at my end. I'm not sure what happened or why.
no worries. Welcome back, Hemant. Did you hear the question? Did you get a chance to hear the
No,
question?
it just dropped off when you were saying the question.
Okay. So the question is, if you had to retrace the steps that you took in your career, is there anything that you would have done differently?
No,
You
no,
are very like sure that you took whatever decisions you took led you to the right place.
yeah, a lot of those were instincts. A lot of those were hunches, and uh, I think there's this element of journey, right? The journey is much more fulfilling than the destination.
True.
But also because I took those steps, uh, I got better at how I make decisions, what works for me. So whether
Right.
a step in the past, gave me the results I wanted or did not, I think
Mhm.
it's made me who I am today. So I'm really, I think, in hindsight, I would just, uh, I don't know if you put me back again with this knowledge, will I choose the same things over and over again? I'm not sure, but I would not change anything.
That's amazing. So inspiring. Same with me as well. I wouldn't change anything because mistakes they shape our journey. They make us who we are, right?
Yeah,
So we get to learn about
yeah,
ourselves as well. All
yeah.
right.
And you need to
So
fail often.
yes, of course, yeah. There is a thing in self improvement sphere, right? It's called fail fast and fail often. So
Yeah,
if you do it, you're going
yeah.
to learn.
Agree.
Yes, amazing. So my next question is, if somebody were to, if they wanted to be where you are currently as a tech transfer evangelist or the exact job description that you have, what is something that they should know? Or in other words, if I had to rephrase it, if you had, one bit of advice that you could give yourself when you were at the start of your career, what would you tell yourself?
Sure. I think a few things are, and I don't think any of this will be like earth-shattering information.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, the domain in which you call yourself an expert, and can be a different one than your degree. But let's say if you have a domain, in my case, it was engineering, and there are a couple of engineering topics where I am really good at. And now in
Mm-hmm.
hindsight, I can say that I'm really good at, not in a bragging way, but
Mm-hmm.
just those are domains where if you give me a problem, I'll figure out a way to solve it. Right? I may
Okay.
not have the answer right away, but I have the confidence that we will tackle it. So that comes from a place of proficiency and being as best as you can be at your craft. So I have one or two
Right.
core domains like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other aspect of a good amount of my work is having this comfort in switching different contexts, like looking at, because startups will work in a variety of domains, and for them to be able to work with you effectively, you have to understand what their pain points are, what their, let's say, technical problems are, or let's say if it's a scaling problem, like how do I really get them further ahead. So you got to be able to switch between context, and that comes with practice. I don't think any
Right.
training can prepare you for it. Just you put yourself in situations, some which are fast changing or fast paced in nature. A lot of them should expose you to interdisciplinary work. So
Right.
and a college is the best place to absorb that, right? Because your
So true.
your college friends can come from various streams. So yeah, if you're thinking of college today, don't just be like, okay, I can learn this thing by an online class. Sure, you can absorb that information on your device, but the true learning comes by bouncing ideas in the cafeteria. I'm not saying go attend the classes, just be in the cafeteria, listen to all the conversations. So yeah, be proficient at one thing and be really good at it. And the other is expose yourself to as many ideas as you can. And over time you'll know that, okay, fine, I can do this thing, meaning I'm built for a role which allows me to switch different contexts, and you can make more progress towards it. And the other
Right.
is you can say like, fine, okay, fine, I'm more comfortable working in one domain, I'd rather make one progress headway, I become a domain expert. And as a domain expert, I can make myself available as a mentor whenever the need arises. So you could still be
Right.
in such a role.
Right. These are really amazing takeaways, very insightful and very valuable. Maybe not earth shattering, but they can definitely change the lives of people who are starting out. Great. Thanks, Hemang. So the next question we have is from the audience. It's from Sasirekha. And the question is, you might get many new innovative ideas when you are working with startups. How do you decide the correct one out of all of them?
Yeah, Shashireka, you're asking very pertinent questions, and uh, uh, so again over here, you would have to get a different, ways to evaluate ideas, different ways to evaluate businesses, right? You have to firstly have a nature of, so when you talk of an innovative product, for example, you have to first have some awareness of what exists in the market today, and how much does this product improve things. Does it improve, let's say, how people will use it? Does it make a difference on some key metrics? Let's say it could be the time taken to do something versus with the previous products, with this new one, right? So you look at what kind of a difference does it bring to the table. You try to have a sense of what the market is like, from a business sense, like, is it a large opportunity, or am I solving something which doesn't need to be solved? And that can happen. It's very important to mark that. And then I would say, how easy will it be for people to adopt that solution? Because someone
Right.
might come up with a really interesting approach, but then to bring it out in the hands of consumers, and it could be businesses also, that can take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of changing. So you try to look at these few areas, and at the end of the day, I'm not saying, even uh, if you say take all these boxes, you could still be wrong. So just be open
Right.
to that, because you're making the assessment based on what you know today. So maybe at a quarterly level, keep reassessing your judgment, and if you were wrong, at least you have a reason for why you were wrong, and that's learning which will help you in the future.
That's really great, amazing answer. I hope that answers your questions, Azireka. Uh, so Hemang, when I showed one of my friends that I was interviewing you, your profile, your introduction, he had a question that he wanted to me to ask you, and that question was like, if somebody has an idea about the product and they are not 100% sure, if they should go ahead with it and invest everything into making a startup out of it, how should they go about validating it? Like, how do they make up the MVP if they are not like tech experts to do it on their own? What is the right approach to validate their idea?
So from what I answered previously, like have a sense of what exists today,
Right.
because and the reason I say that is quite often we are
Market
so
research,
enamored.
right?
Market research, we're so enamored
Yeah.
by our idea that
Hmm.
we tend to lose objectivity.
That's so true. Yes.
And it happens with me also. It happens with everyone I know, and it's okay to,
Yes.
right? Because if I don't fall in love with my ideas, who will? Right? So
Of course.
but at that same time, I should not go all in right from day one. I'd rather take a look at what's there outside, maybe ask, bounce those ideas with a friend and say, okay, am I seeing this problem correctly? Do you think that this is a problem, that needs to be solved? And after that, if you have a headway, if you want to, like, I think the question is, you don't want to put so much resources or go all in. Start
Yes.
small. Start putting things down. Whiteboard it. Try to see if you flowchart it. Most of my, sometimes I may have these bathroom ideas, and I'm like, okay, this thing is going to be a game changer. But if
Right.
I try to whiteboard it, it falls apart.
That happens.
So that's
Yes.
that's your first test. See if you can whiteboard it. See if you can, put a flow chart or a diagram. How would you explain it to a third person that is not familiar with this area itself? So try to do that. And nowadays we have so many online tools that even getting a soft prototype on your laptop is easy. If you don't want to spend time learning those no code tools, you can do it in PowerPoint. Just try to put together something which shows that how this will work.
Right.
And then when you demonstrate it to some unknown people to you, not your friends, just someone in that domain, and if they say this is interesting or this is exciting, that's when I think you have your first validation.
Okay. 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 That's very practical. You don't have to invest anything to do it. You just have to spend time learning more about it. And when you
Yeah.
learn more about it, it will give you even better ideas, and you can keep tweaking your initial idea as well.
Yeah. So more than the solution, the understanding of the problem has to be
Right.
perfect.
Right.
And and lot of shaky products are there because they may have an interesting approach, but if their understanding of the problem is not good, that's why they fall apart or they're not adopted as much. So
Right.
as much as you can understand your problem, understand your users, whether they are businesses or whether they are individuals, understand that.
I think there's some network issue on. Yes, you're
Looks like I'm
back.
back again.
Yes, you're back. So, yes, you're saying that, before we understand the solution, we need to understand the problem, the full, deep understanding of the problem, right? And do you also think we need to understand the current constraints that are there around the problem? Like, if you want to make a solution, you also have to think about the constraints that are there, right?
Yeah, so that
So,
goes in the solution phase, right? So if I go about again the framework of why, what, and how. So the understanding of why is core. Until you get
right,
that sense of why this problem is important, until you can articulate it to the best of your ability, you can't.
right.
I don't think you should move too much into the depth for the other two questions, right? Then with what, you have to define that problem space, because the problem space could be, for example, it's like, hey, it's a sustainability goal that we are trying to achieve, and that can be like a really, it can cover a variety of areas,
True.
and you may not be able to serve all of those areas. So what are you specifically going to address, right? So get to that level, define that space. So that's the next phase of defining which problem is worth attacking for you.
Right.
And after that, you go with how will I attack it? And in that how, you can further put constraints on your solution. That, okay, am I going to make it everyone? Like, am I going to serve each and everyone, or am I going to serve, let's say, senior citizens? Am I going to serve teenagers? Like, and that can be a constraint in the
Specific target
target
audience, right?
market. And based on that,
Yeah,
you may have to adjust your solution.
right. This is such a practical answer, and I'm very happy that I asked this to you. I'm going to make sure my friend who asked this question watches, especially this part of the show, because it's so valuable on so many levels. So, thank you so much for that, Hemang.
Yeah, best wishes to him or her.
Right. Yes. So, as we draw to the towards the end of this show, is there anything that you wish to share with the audience, or is there any question that you think I should have asked but I didn't, or any parting message from your side, Hemang?
So a lot of times people think that innovation requires a certain mindset,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, as an example, people think that, oh, I've got to be like Einstein to innovate. Like, no, anyone can. All you need is curiosity. You've got to you've got to just explore, you know, why a problem exists today, and what can I do about it. And as long as you have that, anyone can innovate. And and once you do innovate, I think at that point of time, if you come with interesting solutions, and the age that we live in today, you must learn to protect your innovations. So think
Yes.
of intellectual property, make that as a part of your culture. And doesn't mean you have to file everything yourself. There are professionals who you can work with,
Right.
right? But again, it starts with innovation. Anyone, all of us can innovate. And we have so many examples to look for. Like, I like to look at sports to become a better innovator. You might look at, let's say, creative people, or someone else might look at say dancing and figure out how it applies. Or you can
Right.
look even in your own domain. There's so much of inspiration around us. So we live in a fabulous time where it's easy to learn. So
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
innovate. Just anyone and everyone can do it.
Exactly. That's such an inspiring note and a perfectly, positive note on which we can end this show. So before we go, thank you so much, Hemang, for sharing your experience and all your insightful answers. I learned a lot. I had so much to think about during this show, and I hope the audience who are there, they also had as much fun as I did. And thank you so much for answering these questions, Hemang. And thank you everyone who attended for asking all your questions live. It was a really interesting discussion. So yes, that brings us to the end of this episode of Wednesday Refocus at 7. I'll be back again next week with another interesting guest, another cool conversation. So make sure you tune in at 7, and then we can learn more about how to think